Hello, readers, and welcome back to Reading in the Middle, the podcast that celebrates the magic, mystery, and meaning behind today's best middle grade books. I'm your host, Anisha Jeffries, Youth Services Manager with the Cleveland Public Library. Today's guest is someone who truly understands how to build a world that pulls you in and a puzzle that won't let go. Ben Guterson, a New York Times best-selling author of the Winterhouse Trilogy, the Einsteins of Vista Point, and his newest novel, The Shadow of the World-Famous Nine. A former educator turned master storyteller, Ben crafts books that are both brainy and heartfelt, filled with riddles, rich settings, and characters who search for truth, belonging, and the quiet kind of courage. In our episode today, we talk about how his time teaching shaped his writing, why he believes middle grade readers are natural detectives, and how music, memory, and the mysteries all come together in his newest work. So, let's get ready for this conversation full of wonder, wisdom, and a few secret doors. Hi, Ben. Welcome to Reading in the Middle. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Anisha. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be visiting with you today and talk about my book and books and wherever else we go.
Excellent. Now, let's go back to the beginning, okay, shall we? What first pulled you into the world of writing for middle grade readers?
Well, I have always been a reader. It all started with my love of reading, my love of books, and that was really fostered in me by my parents. I grew up in Seattle, Washington. My father was a lawyer. My mother was sort of a lifelong student, a very dedicated student, went on to get her PhD after she'd raised her children, me included. And I always saw books around the house, or my father was always reading magazines or newspapers. And there was a beautiful library, the Northeast Branch Library, just up the street from us in Seattle. And it just seemed that I grew up in a world surrounded by a love of literature and a love of language. I had great teachers. My brothers and sisters were into books and education. So I was just sort of steeped in that. I loved books always. They were like my best friends, and they still are. I'm a bookworm. And, as I got older and, I had jobs, I was a school teacher for many years. I worked at Microsoft outside of Seattle for many years. But in the background, I was sort of haunted by this notion that I loved books so much, perhaps I should try my hand at being an author. Eventually I did. I could share my little story about how I wrote my first book, but really my desire to become a writer was an outgrowth of my love of books and my lifelong passion for reading.
Yes, it's wonderful that, when you're young, you don't know that your family, such as your parents, are modeling. They're surrounding you with books, and they're reading. And it's so great when you have that memory of being surrounded by books. I actually have that memory, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love reading and books as well, because it was surrounded by them, just like they're like my family.
Yeah, it's a wonderful gift, your parents and siblings and people in your life can give to you. So I'm grateful for that.
So, Ben, your books often blend mystery, puzzles, and quiet emotional depth. What draws you to that mix? And do you think kids are natural mystery solvers?
Well, I think so. I'm definitely drawn to those elements of mystery and suspense. And I like to create settings that are very large and deep. I've been very fortunate now. I've had 6 middle grade novels out. The first was a trilogy, Winterhouse, set in this enormous hotel, big setting. The next book after that was a standalone where there was this mysterious stone tower and a forest all around with all kinds of things that could be explored. And then this latest series, the World Famous Nine, and the sequel that just came out, The Shadow of the World Famous Nine, is set in the world's largest department store. So I like big settings where there's the opportunity for a number of mysterious things to sort of occur, and for the kids or the heroes in the books to discover a lot of things around every corner or behind every door, or as they're in the forest, or just whatever location I've used for my story. is an opportunity for the kids to discover things. I think, that age, middle grade, roughly ages 8 to 12, is a time of real exploration as a young person is maybe leaving some of the younger things, childhood concerns behind and discovering who they are as an individual rather than sort of how they've been shaped solely by their parents perhaps or their teachers, and learning who they are as individuals. And there's a lot of mystery inherent in that as you discover who you are as a person. And I guess maybe I just sort of tried to mirror that in my books. There's something, again, inherently very mysterious and suspenseful about figuring out who you are as an individual person. Aside from that, though, I just like the fun of mystery. I like books where there's an element of unknown. There's a little bit of magic. In all my books, there's a little bit of magic. It's not huge. I don't have like talking animals or like sorcerers or dragons. Those books are great, but I just don't really go quite that far into the fantasy zone. But I like that I like stories that have sort of a hint of the unknown and the magical always looming there. So because I find those things intriguing and compelling in the books I like to read, I guess I just naturally have created stories with those aspects to them. I think kids like that. I really think everyone sort of likes a good puzzle, likes to try to figure something out. We all love, word games, and we love movies and books where like there's something revealed at the end and you're like, oh, wow, why didn't I see that coming? And I really like that stuff. And that has been my sweet spot for my books thus far. I feel very comfortable there.
Yes. And now your latest book, The Shadow of the World Famous Nine, is such an intriguing title. So can you tell our listeners who the Nine are and what inspired this secretive, high-stakes story?
So, well, now the Nine is the short name or the familiar term for the largest department store in the world. It's called, the full name is the Number 9 Plaza. And I set it in kind of an alternate kind of a southern Siberia. It's not really our world, but it's pretty much like it. And as an aside, Siberia isn't just a cold frozen tundra. There's actually, places that are relatively moderate temperature, and there's metropolises, there's big cities there. So I just thought it'd be kind of cool to set my department store set in a city that was kind of like in a southern Siberia. And so it's the largest department store in the world. When I was a kid, there were lots of department stores in cities all around the country. Now those grand old department stores have mostly gone away, and we see shopping malls typically in cities and suburbs. But department stores really used to be the place to go in like the downtown of a big city. If you needed anything from clothing to appliances to food, it was all there in one enormous store that was generally vertical rather than horizontal like shopping malls. So I just thought it'd be really fun to create this enormous department store. And it's called the Nine for short rather than the Number 9 Plaza. And because it's the greatest department store in the world, I just called the first book that came out about a year and a half ago, I called it The World Famous Nine. So in that book, there's a boy, his name is Xander Olinga. He's visiting the Nine because his grandmother actually owns the entire department store. He makes a friend there, a girl named Natasha. And the two of them discover there's a family heirloom, this magical object that kind of surfaces during that summer when Xander's there. And there's like the bad guys might have designs on it, and they don't want the object to fall into the wrong hands. So, they do their best in book one, but in book two, this mysterious kind of spirit or evil force kind of returns. He's a very shadowy guy, and he's causing even more havoc in the second book. So I connected it to the first book with the Nine, the world famous Nine, but I call it the Shadow of the World Famous Nine because this shadowy figure returns to create some chaos in the Number 9 Plaza. So that's kind of the premise of the second book. Xander and Natasha continuing to try to thwart this evil spirit as he tries to gain control over the department store.
Now, without spoiling too much, there is a layered tension in this book, family, fame, secrets. What was the heart of the story for you as the author?
Well, Xander comes there, and his parents are like professors and scientists. So they're off on this journey to like far off into Russia, kind of, or Siberia. And they're leaving him to enjoy his time with his grandmother. And they're happy to do that. And they're going to do their studies. And Xander's excited because, the store is this great place, and he can explore bakeries and candy shops. And there's a Ferris wheel on the roof. There's all kinds of fun stuff. And he makes a great new friend. So I just thought it'd be really cool. Like, he gets to spend time with his grandmother. He makes a new friend. He's got these family connections. But then he realizes that if this magical object really does reappear during the summer while he's there, as this old legend suggests it might, suddenly he realizes it's on him to try to make sure that like the family legacy and the family store and all these things aren't ruined. And so the story starts off as just he's going to have fun for the summer. Instead, it turns into something, I hope, a little bit larger, where it's on his shoulders to preserve the family legacy and to learn more about his place within the family. And his love for his grandmother grows and expands. And he wants to make sure that he does everything he can to help the people in his life that he loves to keep this store, the thing that they love, from being destroyed. Because the family, his grandmother, I mentioned, owns and operates a store. Her name is Zena Weinby. The Weinby family has owned and operated the Number 9 Plaza for well over a century. So Xander is very proud to be part of this legacy and to step up to help the store in any way that he can. So that was kind of, the emotional heart of the story. I'm not real big on like trying to push really deep messages in my stories. I don't ever want my books to be superficial in any way, but they're for younger people. I want the readers to have fun while they're reading the books and never feel that there's some heavy message that I'm on some platform and trying to make sure that they see something from my point of view. I have faith in young people, and they can make up their own minds about things, and I want them to enjoy the story and see maybe parts of themselves in it wherever they can, and just have a lot of fun losing themselves in the magic of a book, I hope.
Yes, definitely. Because in your books, which I've noticed, they're filled with like wordplay, riddles, literary references. Is that something that's always been a part of your creative DNA?
But yeah, I love talking about books all the time. So I thought it would be really fun to kind of weave some of that in, particularly in Winterhouse. That was the book Winterhouse is my first one, and initiated a trilogy, 3 books. And the protagonist in that book is a girl named Elizabeth Summers, and she's a major bookworm. So she's always talking about books she's read, and like if something happens to her, she'll say, "Oh yeah, that's like Anne and Anne of Green Gables," or "That's like, this character from that book." And she references a lot of books, and they're all ones I really have loved and enjoyed myself. It's kind of fun. Like I've had people tell me, "Oh, I read the Winterhouse books, and you mentioned a whole bunch of other books, and now I'm going to look out for those ones and try to get them and read them." So that's kind of cool, to think that by reading my books, people might be led to other books that they would enjoy. I did a little bit of that in the World Famous 9, not so much. I didn't want to repeat like, "Oh, here's another character," constantly referencing other books. But I try to pay, a little homage to books that I've loved, and kind of, make a reference here and there. You mentioned word puzzles as well. I'm really big on wordplay. I've always loved things like, anagrams and palindromes and all sorts of things. My mother was a real big Scrabble player. She was really good at, the words and all that. And it was fun to play her. And I've always liked word games. And just in my mind, I like to play around with words. I see someone's name, or I see a word somewhere, and start rearranging the letters to make anagrams. And I just like that stuff a lot. It's really fun. So I've worked a lot of it into the books, not just for fun, but also oftentimes the kids in the books solve things by, like, they realize that a word has been scrambled up, or there's like a word ladder, or there's a code, or there's something. And so they're always playing around with words, and it leads them to resolving some of the mysteries in the story. So I try to have 2 dimensions. One is the fun. The other part is the actual practical part of solving clues in the stories. So I like to go in those 2 directions.
I enjoy that because as a reader, you're participating, with them, with the characters. And also, it's challenging and fun to solve puzzles in general. And that's one thing I just love about your stories. Now, looking back at Winterhouse and also the Einsteins of Vista Point, how has your writing evolved, or have your characters taught you about yourself as a storyteller?
Well, that's been a very interesting process. I definitely feel like I'm a better a better writer now after having written these books and worked on them. When I worked on Winterhouse, I had a full-time job and my kids were younger, and now they're all grown up basically. And it was a challenge to find sufficient time to write. I carved out an hour every day, pretty much religiously. I really tried to stick to that, and I want to adhere to a good schedule so that I could really get something done. But it was difficult when you have a full-time job to get into that. So I actually quit my job about 10 years ago once I started writing full-time, and have made a go of that ever since. So that's been good. And to have the time to be able to write or think about my writing uninterruptedly, without having my mind cluttered up with other things, and to be able, like, if I sit down to write, the clock isn't ticking and I need to stop writing or close my computer after an hour, has been a real blessing for me. I have this sort of unoccupied time and mental space to devote to my writing. And I really think that's made me better as a writer, because I don't have to sort of shut things down and be on a schedule and then instantly turn my mind to other affairs. I can just stick with the writing. So I found that I make better choices now as a writer. In the past, it used to take me some time. I'd go through a different draft, or I'd work on a scene for a while. And then I realized, like, wow, this is going nowhere. Nowadays, like, I kind of become aware of the more fruitful paths pretty quickly, and I don't spin my wheels or waste time on things that I used to fumble around with for quite a while. And that's really helped my writing a lot. It's not that it's made me more efficient or save time. It's just that it's made me better. I know it works a little bit better about, like, characterization or dialogue or suspense or whatever it might, or descriptions, or whatever it might be. So my writing, I hope, has improved. I don't know if all the people who read my books would agree, but internally, inside myself, I feel that I'm a better, stronger writer, and I feel that I'm able to write a little bit more nuanced characterizations as my books have gone along, and that I'm able to write plots that are a little more coherent and a little more paced, maybe a little bit better. Although I really feel fondly towards the book Winterhouse, my first one. That was my first book, and I everything I just said is in no way, I'm not putting down my first book or two in any way whatsoever. In many ways, those are my most popular ones. But I just feel that I've grown and have different strengths as my writing career has progressed.
What gives you time? You said you quit your job, so you were able to free a lot of time to focus. And I think that's what's important as well. When you're focused, you have time to really dedicate, and that's what
Yeah.
you were able to do.
Yeah,
You
for
know.
sure.
And so with your books, particularly your first one, you often root your stories in place, whether it's in a hotel, in the woods, or a mysterious town. What's your process for building setting as almost a character in itself?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think, astute that you mentioned that about setting as a character, because I've heard that before and I definitely feel that way. In fact, sometimes people who, maybe they're not all that into the story or the characters that I've written, they will often mention, but I really love the setting, So I'm glad to hear that. I do work really, really hard to make, like, for instance, the hotel in Winterhouse kind of a presence throughout in the way that a character might be. I wanted to feel like a living, vibrant, energetic place. I can't tell you how many people have mentioned or written, over the years, like, gosh, I'd love to visit Winterhouse. That'd be so fun. So that's just what I'm aiming for, because I think to answer your question, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create the kinds of places I would like to visit. I would like to spend time there. And so I just make them into really lavish, rich places as best I can. The process for that, as you asked, is I spend a lot of time sometimes months and months thinking about the location. And I keep a Word document with all the notes for my potential stories. And every time I think of something, I jot it down. Like, on my phone, I have a little notes app, as a lot of people do. And whenever an idea comes to me instantly, no matter what I'm doing, I jot that idea down, because you'll forget it otherwise. I bet all of us, it's like some idea comes to you for whatever it is about it, not about writing, but just anything. And you think, oh, this is so strong in my mind at this moment. I'll remember it later. And then you get home that night and you're like, what was it I was thinking about? So when I get what I think is a cool idea for my story, I jot it down right away, or it's going to slip out of my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Create a Word document, and I get all my notes in there about setting, let's say. I also have things about character and plot and codes and all this kind of stuff. But I create a lot of notes about the setting, and slowly it pulls together. I think about everything that could be fun in an enormous hotel, everything from the music to how it smells to, what sorts of attractions would be down that hallway and in that corridor and so on. I do the same thing for the department stores. I did a ton of research about department stores that used to exist all around the country, no matter what city it was, Detroit, Cleveland, New York, wherever it might be. I got
Cleveland.
Create all these notes. And so then I have like a deep well to draw from of all sorts of ideas that I can put into my setting. And then I just use every opportunity I can in the story to place the characters in different parts of the hotel or different parts of the forest or different parts of the department store, and kind of spotlight all these cool things that might be there. So I work really, really hard to make the setting come alive. And I love to hear readers say, I really felt like I was there, and I'd love to visit that place someday.
Now, this is the question I was going to ask you, but what kind of feedback do you get from young readers? Has a child ever cracked one of your riddles faster than you expected?
Yeah, so a few things here. Just to answer that last question first, well, it's fresh in my mind. In the Winterhouse books, I built puzzles into the chapter headings in all the books. In the first book, I worked in what are called word ladders. I won't explain them here because it would be very complicated just to explain it. It's easier if a reader can look at an example. But word ladders, in a nutshell, you start with a first word and you're marching toward a terminating word. Again, I won't explain very much. But between those two words, there could be as many as 4, 5, or 6 different steps along the way, different words that a person comes up with. I have had kids write to me and say, hey, Ben, chapter, 25, it took you 5 steps to get from the first word to the last word. I did it in 4 steps. And I'm like, well, that is great, but you're really good at that. So that's really fun. But I build in those word puzzles there's word ladders in the first Winterhouse book. There's anagrams in the chapter headings of the second book. And then there's what I call hidden words in the third one. So yeah, I have gotten feedback. What was the first part of your question? If I hear from readers or something like that? What was it again?
You answered them. I mentioned what feedback do you get from young readers? So you mentioned that, and has a young person ever cracked one of your riddles faster than you expected? So you answered that.
Well, I do get feedback. It's really remarkable to me. I'll tell you, when I first started writing middle grade books, I thought, well, I'll never get any reviews on Amazon or Goodreads, or I'll never really get emails, because the only adults get on and give reviews on Goodreads, and only adults would write me an email. A 10-year-old kid probably wouldn't, but I get tons of emails, and even adults give me reviews or ratings on Goodreads and all that. So a lot of adults, it seemed like to read middle grade books. But it's really nice, Anisha. I get really nice emails from kids really all around the world. My books have been translated into 11 languages. Not all of them. The Winterhouse books are the most. They've been translated into 11 languages. The Einsteins and the world famous 9, those books have been translated into about 6 or 7 languages around the world. And it's so fun to hear from readers, on the other side of the globe. I'll tell you something. Just this past weekend, I got 2 emails from 2 girls in Poland who were reading the Winterhouse books. And I could tell by their last names that they were sisters, or at least related somehow. So I wrote both of them back. And then A couple hours later, I got an email from their father, and he said, "Thanks for writing my girls. They were so happy, which is great. I mean, I was probably happier than they were to hear from them than they were to hear from me." And he said, "Thanks." He said, "I actually translated their Polish messages into English because I speak English and they don't. But thanks for writing them." And he sent me the sweetest picture. It was the two girls sitting on a chair to get in a big, overstuffed plush little love seat or whatever, sofa or something. And they're reading my books, the ones that were in the Polish versions. And there's these little girls reading my book. And, it just really gets you to think like there's these girls on the other side of the world and they're reading my books in Polish. And that's just amazing to me. So it's wonderful to receive these messages from young readers.
So wonderful that the father sent you the photo. It's something to, that you can remember and know why you're doing this.
Yeah, right.
And remember, why you wanted to become a writer
Right.
for middle grade readers.
Yeah,
That's very
exactly.
satisfying, right? It's great to have the social media now where we can share, readers can share with you their experiences with your
Right.
book. I think that's
Right.
great. So Ben, but can you give us, our listeners, a glimpse into what you're working on next? More mysteries, more puzzles?
You got it, Anisha. More mysteries and more puzzles. My next book, well, let me tell you this before I mention my next book. I have this idea that I will write 9 books or 9 series, and they'll be set in 9 different locations around the world. So the Winterhouse books were the first one, the Einsteins of Vista Point, second location, and the world famous 9 books, the third one. So that's 3 out of 9, either standalone books or series, whether they're 2 books or 3 books or whatever. These 9 places in my mind, the concept I have is that way back, like 120 or 130 years ago, there were these mystical monks going around the world delivering 9 objects to 9 different places around the world. And these objects kind of like keep the good vibes going all around the world. So they kind of distributed kind of like a little fragment of goodness in 9 different places. Winterhouse, the Tower, the Einsteins, and the department store. But these magical objects in each location have to be protected. They have to be kept safe. And in each of my books, as there are kids in the stories who fear that the magical objects are imperiled in some way, they need to pull on their resources and make sure that these magical objects. So even though they're having fun and doing something and working to just make sure that the thing in their own location is safe, it connects to these other places all around the world. So I kind of have this big vision, like they're keeping the whole world safe for goodness. So that's my overall idea. So the next book or series, it'll be at least 1 book, is called The Time Corridor. And it will take place in a place kind of like Japan, maybe, but I never really say where the locations are. I want people to kind of use their imagination a little bit, and I don't get too specific about the location. And there's a boy there, he lives with his mother near this huge museum. And one branch of the museum, one wing of it, is called the Time Corridor. And in that are all these clocks and pendulums and hourglasses and sundials, thousands of them from all around the world. The curator of the museum, the owner, has collected these from all around the world, all from history. And the boy, Ricky, from his apartment, he can see the backside of the Time Corridor. He can see one window. And one night, the light comes on in the window late at night. And he starts wondering, what's going on there? He starts to see it happen a few nights in a row. And then he goes by and he hears something there late at night going on inside the Time Corridor. And this launches him into this mysterious set of circumstances. There's also, there's like a maze on the second floor of the museum on the floor. And he starts putting all these strange things together about timepieces and something magical going on in the Time Corridor and this maze that's in the museum. So that's kind of the puzzle stuff that I'm working on for that book. I'm about in the middle of it right now. I'm just drafting. I've got several months to go, and then I'll set it aside and I'll think about it, and just keep working on the book. But it's tons of fun to work on. And as always, I hope readers will like it.
Well, they will. I know I will. I can't wait. Oh, that sounds good.
Very good.
I'm already like leaning in.
Good.
Intrigued, So Ben, this is where we have our quick fire round. I don't know if you've listened to the previous podcast, but it's real quick. I just ask you questions. I just tell you, don't think, just answer.
All right.
And, don't think.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, I hope so. Whatever happens, we'll see.
We'll see. Favorite classic mystery?
The West End game.
Pen or keyboard?
Keyboard.
Most underrated word in the English language?
Boy, that is a tough one. Most underrated word in the English language? I would say, I just used the word imperiled, I think, while we were talking a little while ago. I don't know why, but I really like that word. It makes it sound like something really bad is about to go down, but you just don't really hear that word very much. Maybe I'd think of others, but this is the lightning round, so we'll keep going.
A dream author to co-write a book with?
Living or dead?
Either one.
I'd love to write a book with Roald Dahl. Let's say I'm Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James the Giant Peach. That guy was so mischievous, and he would be a lot of fun to write a book with. It.
Very good. Okay, see, you did it. That was easy, lightning round.
Wow.
Now, see. Now, my other question is, if you could team up with two characters from different books of yours, who would you pair, and what kind of adventure would they go on?
So two characters, they would pair them up, and they would go off on some adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it would be fun to see how I would like to pair Elizabeth from Winterhouse with Natasha from the world famous Nine. Elizabeth is the main character in the Winterhouse books, and Natasha is sort of the sidekick or the secondary character in the world famous Nine. But they have a lot of similarities. They're both kind of really brash and bold, and I'd kind of like to see how they hit it off together. I just think a lot more sparks would fly with the two of them together. I love Xander from the world famous Nine, but Natasha kind of has to keep poking him to man up a little bit. He's not really lame or anything. It's just she brings him out of his shell, and I really like that dynamic in their friendship. He's not a pushover in any way, and he gets a lot stronger during the book. But she's naturally very spunky, and I'd like to see how she and Elizabeth get along together. I think there'd be a lot of arguments, but they'd also solve a lot of mysteries together. So those two together would be kind of fun.
That would be fun. I would like to see that. You never know. So, Ben, where can our listeners find you? Instagram or your website, both?
Yes, Instagram. I think it's at ben.guterson. I mean, they can find it very easily. Just, you do a Instagram search and you'll find it there. I'm almost positive it's ben.guterson, but I don't have it offhand, and I don't have it.
That's okay.
Anything else. I also do have a website. It's benguterson.com, and I have a lot of fun there. I put it together. I'm not like some webmaster. I'm sure it doesn't look like totally professional, but I put a lot of fun stuff there, and there's games and activities and so on. I've put a lot of pictures on there and things about my books. And there's also a contact form on there. So if people have questions for me, they can send it via the contact form. As long as they input their email address correctly, I'll be able to answer them. But those are the two primary ways. I'm also on Facebook. Anyone can friend me on Facebook. Everything I do is public. I don't have any sort of sites or whatever like that or whatever. You don't even have to friend me. You can just go to Facebook and see everything I put up there. And same thing with Instagram. Some people set their accounts for private or something, I think, but mine are not that way. But that's all I have, Facebook and Instagram and my website. And anyone can check them out and can reach out to me literally through all three of those ways if they like. And that's really fun. I love hearing from people. And I've tried to get a little more active on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not very good with the social media stuff. I'm okay. The younger people, I think, do a lot better, but I'm doing what I can, and it's kind of fun, and hopefully I'll get better at it.
Because, especially if you're doing any class or school visits, or, you're on the road, we can follow you through that. I think.
Yeah, I do. I'm lucky to do a lot of that. I do post about that. If, Anisha or you or any of the listeners happen to glance at my Instagram stuff or Facebook, you'll see just recently I've been doing a lot of school visits, and I've done tons in the past. I always try to put up a picture, give a little shout out and all that. And I visit libraries. I've got a virtual visit to a library in Massachusetts this afternoon, a tween book group next week, another one. So yeah, people can feel free to reach out. Any other librarians out there? I didn't mean to turn this into kind of a plug or promo, but in any way, but I'm just letting people know.
Plug.
Just letting people know I love to do that kind of stuff. So feel free to reach out. Librarians or teachers, I love making visits, in person, virtual, whatever it is. I love connecting with readers. And if it isn't clear by now, Anisha, I'm a huge reader myself, and I know the thrill of, connecting with other people who love books. So I'm out there and available, and just reach out.
This is your time to shine. And this is, you said you don't want to plug, you should. And this is educators listen, librarians listen, parents listen. So, and hopefully I have young people that listen as well, but you should be able to talk about that. And that's why I wanted you to mention their social media. That's
okay.
So they can follow you.
BenGuterson.com, Instagram, Facebook. Find me right there.
Goodness. Ben, this was such a pleasure and a treat. I want to thank you again for being on Reading in the Middle. And listeners, please, Ben has so many books, but he has a very brand new book out, and you should go to your local independent store and also your library and check out all of his books, because they're a treat and a wonderful read.
Well, thank you, Anisha, and it's such a pleasure to speak with you. And your role in the reading world as a librarian, as a reader yourself, and as the host of this wonderful podcast is really, really important to spread the word. And I'm just really thrilled that you reached out to me. It's wonderful to be here and to have a chance to talk to you. I really, really thank you a lot, and love discussing books with you. So thank you so much.
So much, Ben.
That was Ben Guterson, a former educator, puzzle lover, and the author behind some of the most quietly brilliant middle grade novels of the last decade. Whether it's the snow-draped corridors of Winterhouse, the grief and wonder of the Einsteins of Vista Point, or the tangled fame and family secrets in the shadow of the world-famous Stein, his stories invite young readers to think deeply, feel fully, and lean into mystery. His books don't just entertain, they ask questions about who we are, where we come from, and how we find light in the darkest corners of our lives. If this is your first time meeting Ben's work, I hope it won't be your last. Reading in the Middle is produced and hosted by me, Anisha Jeffries. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review, and most importantly, share this episode with a reader who's ready to turn the page on something extraordinary. And always, always support your independent bookseller and library so you can catch all of the latest books by Ben. Thanks for listening, and remember, keep reading in the middle.